Hello friends, and welcome to MTG River King. Welcome to the first episode of The Best Among the Rest. This series will look at cards that seem identical but they're really not, and evaluate them and rank them, and hopefully helps you make the decision to which card is to include in your deck. So without further ado, for this episode we'll be looking at 4 converted mana cost mana ramps, which let you search your library for 2 lands. So we have Explosive Vegetation, Circuitous Route, Migration Path, Blighted Woodland, Skyshroud Claim, Ranger's Path, and Hunting Wilds. Explosive Vegetation is a sorcery that costs 3 generic mana and 1 green mana, and it reads, search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, put them into the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. For the longest time, Explosive Vegetation has been the popular pick for commander decks, which made the price of it to go up, and now has an average price of £1.30, even with the recent Mystery Booster reprint. You could say that Explosive Vegetation is the vanilla version of the 4 CMC mana ramps. Circuitous Route is exactly the same as Explosive Vegetation, but gives you the option to search for gate cards. Now, gate cards like the Mir Guild Gate and Boros Guild Gate are, in my opinion, the basic of the basics of the tap lands, and one shouldn't run in their commander decks because there are better alternatives. So I consider Circuitous Route a cheaper version of Explosive Vegetation. The card only costs an average of 70 to 80 pence. Migration Path is the recent iteration of the 4 CMC Search 2 lands cards, being reprinted in the Ikoria Lair of the Behemoth set. Migration Path reads exactly the same as Explosive Vegetation, but with the added cycling ability. Cycling is that you pay the cycling cost, then discard that card, and then you draw a card. So let's say you drew this late game where you do not need any more lands, you can just cycle it and then it will draw you a card. In my opinion, this is the best version of this kind of spell because of the added cycling ability, and it's the cheapest at an average cost of 50 to 60 pence. I've included Blighted Woodland on this list because I believe that you should not include this card in your deck as a land but as a mana ramp. It doesn't come into play tapped, so you can just immediately pay the 3 generic mana and 1 green mana to search for up to 2 basic lands. And because it is an activated ability, you can activate it at instant speed. And also you can just use it as a land if you drew it late game. The average cost for this card is 50p. Skyshroud Claim is a sorcery that costs 3 generic mana and 1 green mana, and it reads, search your library for up to 2 forest cards, put them onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. And this card is very good as it lets you search for forest cards, so you can choose to search for true jewel lands like Taiga, Bayou, Savannah and Tropical Island, or the shock lands like Stomping Ground, Temple Garden, Overgrown Tomb and Breeding Pool. Now both lands come into play untapped, unless obviously you choose one of the shock lands to come into play tapped, then that means you can use them straight away. The average cost of this card is around £1.30 to £1.50. Ranger's Path and Hunting Wilds are exactly the same as Skyshroud Claim. The difference being with Ranger's Path and Hunting Wilds is that the lands come into play tapped. Hunting Wilds though has an added kicker ability, but the kicker cost is so high and I wouldn't recommend you using it. Now to the ranking. At number 5, Hunting Wilds and Ranger's Path are tied because they only let you search for forest cards and they come into play tap. And also, if you choose to run one of these in your decks, which will probably because you have True Jewel lands or Shock lands, I'm sure you can afford to include Skyshroud Claim instead. Now at number 4, we got Explosive Vegetation. Number 3, Circuitous Route. I rank this higher than Explosive Vegetation because obviously it's cheaper, and also if for some reason you included a lot of great gate cards in your deck, then this card is really good in that deck. Number 2, Blighted Woodland. And for number 1 spot, Skyshroud Claim and Migration Path are tied. So If you're not trying to build on a budget and has true dual lands and shocklands in your deck, then Skyshroud Claim is my #1 recommendation for you. But if you're trying to build on a budget, then my #1 recommendation is Migration Path. It fits the budget, it's a recent release, so there's loads of copies out there of this card, and that cycling ability just puts it above the rest. So in conclusion, Skyshroud Claim is the best among the rest if you are not on a budget, and Migration Path is the best among the rest if you are building on a budget. The average prices for the cards are true at the time of recording and is based on the online cost of the cards. Most of the time you could get these cards cheaper at your local game shop, so I recommend that you support your LGS by buying your cards from them. Thank you friends for watching. This is Ray of MTG River King signing off.